What is up, everybody? Today I'm going to be giving you guys 5 tips going over every single thing you need to know to get into VGC and be the best competitive player you can be before Scarlet and Violet come out. I've never really made a guide like this before, but I get this question all the time in my comments section. It's always, I want to get into VGC. How did you get into VGC? What do I need to know to learn everything about VGC? And that's hopefully what we're going to be going over today. Like I said, I have 5 things that I really tried to put myself in the mind of a new player and think about what I would want to be told. So hopefully you guys like these. If you do like these, let me know in the comments. And if you guys have any questions, think about let me know in the comments as well. I'll do my best to answer every single one. Also, I'll be leaving a ton of videos in the description here that will be going over that link to specific things that we're going to be talking about. So if you want a little bit more explanation on any of these 5 topics, think about checking out the video description. So without further ado, let's hop right into it. I think the first thing that you actually need to know into getting into VGC, the first resource, like a lot of people want me to go over breeding or IVs or EVs, all the math. That's not where you should start. I actually think the place you should start is going to be on YouTube. I think you should actually go on YouTube or Twitch, vice versa. You know, my YouTube's right here. I just want you to find some YouTubers that make competitive VGC content. This is my channel right here. We make competitive VGC content. We play a bunch of other formats as well, but there's also a bunch of other VGC content creators. You got people like Wolf, you got people like Cybertron. Beast Coast is a fusion of James Beck and Cybertron, as well as a couple other creators. You got Cloverbells. You got a lot of different channels making competitive VGC content on YouTube. And what I would say is watch a few of these and find the content creator that makes a type of content that you resonate with. Do they use teams that you like? Do they use Pokemon you like? Are they really analytical? Do they have a lot of fun? Do they make a lot of rental codes? Think about trying to find your favorite PokeTuber that makes competitive VGC content, and I'm not going to say try to mimic their style, but find what you like about their style, and then once you realize that, you can start trying to have that own style in your own games, and it's going to be the very start of developing what you kind of need as a player. I'm also just, you know, I have a very, very small list, but, you know, we are doing this live. I'm not the type of YouTuber that takes things in a million different takes, so we're just going to keep talking. Basically, a lot of these YouTubers make different rental codes, and I'm actually going to be giving you guys a few rental codes for free. So if you guys like free rental codes and you want teams to start out with as a new player, hit that like button. Look at that YouTube sellout right there. Now let's check out some rental codes, because a lot of these YouTubers have rental codes. I also offer rental codes on my Patreon. You can check that out in the description of this video. But you know what? I'm going to be giving you guys a couple free rental codes for you guys to learn how to play. The way that you use rental codes and what rental codes are is rental codes are a way for you to use teams that other players have made without actually having to go through the trouble of learning how to do all the EV, IV, breeding, all that stuff. Just find the players you like, find the mods that you like, and then find rental codes for those Pokemon. We're going to talk about how to find rental codes a little bit later on in this video, so stick around if you want to learn how to find more rental codes. But generally, the rental codes section is right here in the game once you connect to the internet. Let's check out 2 rental codes that I have to give to you guys for VGC. The first one is going to be right here. So this rental code is one that I made for my Patreon, and it's a generally pretty easy to play rental code. You have some Tailwind speed control with Whimsicott, you have a redirection with Indeedee, you have a Scarf Kyogre, Zacian, a little bit of a fast core, good Dynamax options, and Giratina. It also features a Gmax Dreadnought, which is actually a really underrated mon in this format. So if you want something that's a little bit off meta, that's a little bit of fun and very easy to play for newer players, I would say check out this rental code. But that's not all I have for you. I have 2 rental codes. So I have this rental code and this rental code. We used this on stream very recently. This is another very, very easy to play team. Similar idea. These are great for newer players. Redirection on Indeedee, Tailwind for speed control, Scarf Kyogre, you know exactly what you're doing at your own speed tier, Regieleki for additional speed control, Calyrex is a sweeper, and Kyurem is a good max option. This team makes it very easy to realize when you're winning and when you're losing. And if you can realize when you're winning, why you're winning, which is probably because you're speed control, or why you're losing, which is probably because your opponent got a better speed control, it makes it really obvious. Hopefully, if you kind of know what you're doing, maybe you come from a singles background, so you can try to take notes and problem solve for yourself. Because these teams are so easy to play, they have like a general very, very easy flow chart. After a couple games with these sort of teams, you'll generally be understanding what you need to be doing to win or lose moving forward, and that kind of goes into like the second tip, because that first tip was check out YouTubers, find rental codes, find mons that you like. We'll be going over how to find more rental codes a little bit later on in the video. But the second tip is actually Look at me, professional YouTuber over here, going through, changing everything. Bam. The second tip is actually going to be playing on Pokemon Showdown. And so for those who don't know what Pokemon Showdown is, let's go to like the main page right here. Pokemon Showdown, this is why Pokemon Showdown looks like. It is a mon-battler thing. People ask me every day, a lot of people probably think Pokemon Showdown is pretty easy to know. A lot of people don't know this exists. It's a team builder that you can use to build EV spreads. The EV spreads for the team, the Giratina Dreadnought team is right here. These are all complicated EV spreads that you might not understand if you're a newer player, but you can see all these things. You can test this stuff on Showdown. You can also play games against other players or even watch games against other players on Showdown. So we can go set this to VGC, set this to Battle Stadium Doubles 13. Let's just see who's playing right now. So we can just watch this game. This is a Dynamax Rayquaza. Let's just go... let's go back to the start of the game and we can just look at it for a sec. So they're waiting with Zarude and Rayquaza. So you can use this to learn about other players. So if you don't want to go watch on YouTube or stuff like that, you can watch players live. You can even sometimes ask these players questions live if you're in the chat and stuff like that. So it's a pretty cool resource for learning how to theory craft, build your teams, stuff like that. It also has a built-in damage calculator, which you can use to actually start calculating your moves. So a lot of the things that a lot of newer players don't really know is that, like, you know, your EVs and your items, they change how much damage all your moves do. And if you're unfamiliar with some of those things, remember, if you're using, you know, like I was talking about a little bit earlier, if you're using some of these pre-made rental codes, you know, you might be thinking like, man, that Astral Barrage on Calyrex or Water Spout's really good on Kyogre. I wonder if it'll KO something. You could plug the Kyogre with the exact EV spread or the Calyrex with the exact EV spread and item into this damage calculator and see how much damage it does to the opposing Pokemon. You know, you can change the EVs on those Pokemon as well. So, for example, if you're going to be using like a Kyogre, you could plug in the Water Spout on this side, do all this stuff with the Kyogre, and you could plug in like a Magearna on this side. And for example, like let's say the Water Spout, let's say it just KOs the Magearna before you put any EVs in, but the Magearna you actually fought in game, it didn't KO. That would mean that Magearna had defensive EVs in its HP and special defense stats, respectively. So it's just one of those things that when you put yourself in a position to start problem solving yourself and learning from those mistakes, which is what we're going to be going over in the next tip, you're going to start to grow as a player, and it's all because you're using these rental codes that already have a pretty good foundation. The last thing I generally want to mention in terms of like, you know, these sort of Pokemon Showdown-esque team builder type things is that I personally really recommend using Maryland as well. This is something that I always do whenever I'm building teams. I love throwing these things into team builders and seeing what my total weaknesses are and always trying to have multiple resistances for every weaknesses that I have. Note that this team's pretty balanced. I never like to go over 2 weaknesses in the weaknesses department unless I have a ton of resists for those types. So you can see this is a very well-balanced team. Not weak to a bunch of stuff. Very resist heavy on all the things that we share weaknesses to. So it's really good. I always like to say general rule of team building is you don't want to make one Pokemon have to do everything, right? Does that make sense? It's never a great idea to have one Pokemon have to do everything. So if you were looking for, like, for example, speed control, right? The Whimsicott has Tailwind, but like the Giratina on this team has Icy Wind if you need a little bit of speed control. The Dreadnought actually has Giga Impact, which turns into Max Strike, which is a little bit more speed control. So it's not reliant 100% on Whimsicott for speed control. And, you know, it's not... And another one of these things that's like, it's not just one Pokemon's issue. Let's take a look at, a good example is this. And this is an even better team to show that example. It's right here. So for example, if you want big AoE damage, it's not just Kyogre that has to deal with that. Calyrex can do it. It's not just Whimsicott's job to do speed control this team. Regieleki also has speed control. So it makes your opponent respect multiple speed control options, because if it was just Whimsicott's job to do speed control, your opponent would just go with a board that 100% removed Whimsicott or dealt with Whimsicott, and then you'd be left high and dry. You want to make them respect multiple different variants at the same time, and that's what sets VGC a little bit apart from singles, is because it splits your opponent into a bunch of different little 50-50s every single turn from the start of the game, and that's one of the things that makes VGC a lot of fun for a lot of players. So again, think about using the Maryland Team Builder, think about using Pokemon Showdown, and you know, the next thing that we're going to be talking about, right? This also ties into it, because we're talking about how to actually grow. The first 2 tips that I've had is check out YouTube, find your favorite players, find some rental codes. The second tip was go to Pokemon Showdown, play some games on Showdown, use the team builder on Showdown, familiarize yourself with these things. The next thing I would actually say is anytime you're playing games, and I will have a video linked in the description going over how I do this, is to take notes while you're playing. You can't really see them right now. This is the notes for this video that I'm doing right now. Notes are actually really, really important for VGC, and I feel it's a thing that a lot of players don't add to their repertoire until they're established. And then once you're already established as a not note-taking person, it's really, really hard to go back to learn how to take notes correctly. And what I mean by taking notes is, like, let's say you're playing a game on Showdown. Let's go back to Showdown for just one moment. You can take notes when you're playing on Showdown. You can take notes when you're playing in game. And let's just take a look at this game. Let's go to an instant replay. So at the start of the game, these are what the teams look like right here. Right, so what I would do if I'm the player on the bottom that's using like the Giratina and stuff like that, let's make it just a little bit easier to see. I would be writing down, I'd write down Roserade, Tornadus, Ho-Oh, Zacian, Eternatus, Salazzle, right? And then what I would personally do, again, we're not going to go super in depth here, I would try to write down like what Pokemon I think they're going to bring based off what my team says that it does. And then at the start of the game, once we actually get into the game, what I would be doing is writing down every single move that I see, the order in which I see it. I'd be writing down turns on Trick Room, max turns, all those things. Anything I can possibly gain from this game in terms of data, I would be writing that down and I would be looking at it. And at the end of every single game, what I would be doing is writing about a paragraph, talking about the things that I learned, the things that I played around correctly, the things that caught me off guard. Basically, just completely get all of my thoughts on every single game out in the bottom in about a paragraph at the end of every single note-taking period. And what that's going to do, I have a full link in my Patreon to like the value of taking notes. It's a completely free post in my Patreon, link in that description. Basically, the value in taking notes, right, is you get to understand the meta from what your team and your perspective and your meta play style does. A lot of people can say, oh yeah, just use this rental team and you'll be fine. Just copy this player, you'll be fine. But what this does is it lets you understand the meta from whatever your play perspective is. You can go to websites let's talk about Pikalytics. You can go to Pikalytics and it'll show you the usage stats for Zacian. It'll show you the usage stats on Kyogre. It'll show you the usage stats on Gastron. All these Pokemon like this will show you their usage stats. You can even do the same thing in like Pokemon Home on your phone. The website won't load, but Pokemon Home is another good resource for showing the usage stats, how often Pokemon are used, how often different, their moves that they use, the common items, EV spreads, things like that. You can see all these in both of these places, but what that's not going to give you is an understanding of what happens in game when you actually battle. So for example, when I take a lot of notes and I review them after about a week or even a full day's worth of games, I like to say play at least about 10 games a day to keep yourself fresh. You want to shoot for about a 60 to 70% win rate if possible. That's absolutely killing it. Realistically, you're probably going to get about a 50. But at the end of the session, you're gonna realize like, wow. So Pokemon Pikalytics says that Kyogre has a 34% usage rate, but I encountered Kyogre 80% of the time, and that's a lot, right? So that means that players that are playing against you brought Kyogre 80% of the time, and you can also skew that even further into being like, well, it was one of those things where, remember the team preview, they only get to pick 4, right? So it's like, you're gonna start to realize that like, wow, I fought 80% Kyogres, and they brought it every single time it was in the team preview. That means I have a hold in the Kyogre. That means you can go back to your team builder. You can look at your team builder and say, like, what can I do to have a better match versus Kyogre? Because every time I see it, which is more than the actual, average data says, I know I'm getting all over the place here, but hopefully you understand what I'm talking about, right? You want to build your own data and not rely on these websites, because these websites are very general. They're very broad. What you want to do is say, at the end of a session, you can be like, all right, I saw 10 Zacians and they were brought 8 times. I saw 8 Kyogres, they were brought 8 times. I saw 4 Palkias and none of them were brought. That means that you have something in this team preview that you have that means that you're beating Palkia, that's scaring the Palkias away. You want to do your best to understand what that is, write that stuff down in your notes, and internalize that, and maybe you can even take that into the next team. So next time you have a team that has a problem with Palkia, you can go back to this first team that did something that dissuaded it and take some of that stuff from that team, some of the stuff from that team's playstyle, and fuse it in with the new team. And that's how you build your own playstyle. That's the thing that I think a lot of players don't understand, is it's fusing a bunch of other teams that have worked in the past together to create new answers that solve problems. Another cool thing about taking notes is if you take a lot of notes and you take a lot of notes at tournaments and events, over time, formats, kind of like I'm talking about, teams fuse together, formats change, people change. You may be able to go to a tournament and be like, wow, I fought you on Showdown or on the ladder or in a tournament a year ago, 2 years ago. This was your team. This is what your set was running. I've had situations where I'm playing in actual tournaments and I'm like, oh man, the last time I fought that guy, this was his Heatran set. Let me bust out my notebook that I brought with me from that specific year and see what kind of Heatran he ran. And because I take such detailed notes, I was able to understand what sort of Heatran set he was actually familiar with before our game even started. Now, some might say like, oh, that's bending the rules. I wasn't looking at it in game. I just knew that I was going to play against that person. So I familiarized myself with what I'd seen them use before. I would say that's very good prep work. And you can get to that same level if you take really, really detailed notes. Again, I have a full link in the description on how I take notes. It has like a little camera that goes over it. We review games. Please check out that video. And if you have any questions, think about letting me know in the comments. So the next thing that I'm going to say, it's another video that I've linked in the description, is actually going to be checking out regional locations. There are regional locations. I don't have the image up for that, so we'll just go here. But basically, there are a lot of regional locations that you can be checking out all over the world. There's a lot in North America. There's a lot in Europe. There's some in South America. They're everywhere. There's regionals going to be everywhere in 2023, and I would highly recommend just doing a quick Google search or checking the video I've linked in the description talking about where all the regionals are and anything you might need to know about that. Another thing you might actually want to do is also join Twitter. Twitter is actually the hub for where most VGC players are nowadays. We don't have our website, we don't have like a Smog on any other website that we use, but we do all realistically use Twitter. So I would say, go to Twitter and think about following some of those PokeTubers that, I linked a little bit earlier. You can check them out right here. A lot of these players have links to their Twitters on their YouTubes and in their videos and stuff like that. And if you follow some of these people will tweet out anything you realistically need to know about going to events. Some of these people are even casters for events and stuff like that. So it's a great resource for learning where tournaments are. The last thing I would say is about, the fourth tip, which is like, learning where events are, learning where tournaments are. You can also play in online tournaments, which are highly advertised on Twitter, and they're all usually free to enter, is join a Discord. I think Discord is a very, very, very good resource for learning how to get into VGC. It wasn't around. Discord didn't exist back when I started playing VGC in 2011. So the fact that you can find a group of like-minded players in a specific Discord, there's so many Discords. Basically, all those YouTubers have their own Discords. A lot of the different communities have their own Discord. I personally have my own Discord. There's a link to it in the description. We have about 10,000 people. All of them like playing Pokemon with our favorite Pokemon. We like finding unique meme teams. We're very anti-meta, and we're very fun to get along with, I would say. We have a very unique corner of the VGC community that we like playing with. We run our own tournaments. We have our own general safe place that we can all play Pokemon together. Like I said, you can check that out. It's completely free in the description. And I would highly recommend joining a couple Discords because people are going to be talking there all the time about different things, and it's so good to get one-on-one feedback from players that you're playing games against. You can say, hey, does anyone want to play a game? You play a game, you say like, hey, why did this move not work? Or how did you know I was going to do this? Or how did this mechanic actually play out? And those players will just tell you. And it's so nice to be able to get that feedback. So think about joining a Discord. And usually in these Discords, there's a self-promo tab for other Discords so you can find other Discords to play around. So there's so many things Discord has to offer. I'm sure you guys know how good Discord is by now. So think about checking out a Discord. So the fifth tip, right? The fifth tip is going to be, believe it or not, actually playing ranked. I would say take these rental codes, go play on ranked. You can play on Showdown if you want, but just go play ranked battles. It does not matter what tier you're in. It doesn't matter if you're in Pokeball. It doesn't matter if you're in Great Ball, Ultra, Master Ball. Just play. I know a lot of people really like to think that there is such a ladder anxiety and it's so serious that every single game matters so much. But if you treat each game as a learning experience and think about if you're taking those notes like I was talking about, it's really, really good to lose. That sounds terrible to people. I hate losing too. Everyone hates losing. But if every single time you lose, you learn why you lost. Let's say, for example, I'm using that Giratina Dreadnought team. And I maxed my Giratina, and maybe I should have brought Dreadnought. Maybe I should have brought Dreadnought. I should have maxed that instead. I maxed the wrong Pokemon. I can write that down in my notes and be like, man, next time I'm in that exact same matchup, and I think the Giratina is a good option, let me re-go over that and assess the situation and get a little bit more level head and think that maybe I should max a Dreadnought there. Learning from those mistakes, solving those problems, it's the key to getting better. Let's say I'm playing with both of these teams are very aggressive teams, and my opponent gets a really good Trick Room lead up on me, and there wasn't that much I could do about it with the 2 mons that I led with. Maybe the next time that I play against that same type of Trick Room team, I try to flowchart out a different sort of team that can deal with that Trick Room setup. And you know what? Maybe the next person I play against that has the potential to go for that Trick Room setup doesn't go for that Trick Room, at least what I'm doing is thinking proactively and trying to problem solve and learn. Because, like, let's say I try to really counter that Trick Room lead and they do something completely different and they beat me again. That's 2 losses. But that's 2 different things that now I know don't work. Testing things, like throwing what you can at the ladder and seeing what sticks, definitely does work for me. But I really, really will say that, like, internalizing the reasons why you lost is the key to then trying your best to solve them through the use of notes, through the use of team builders, through the use of damage calculators, through all the different things I talked about in this video. Trying to your best to learn how to solve them after utilizing those resources is what makes you a better player and gives you your own playstyle. And that's the thing that I think is really important. A lot of the VGC players now are just different carbon copies. I guess I will say a lot of the people that started in Sword and Shield are kind of a carbon copy of X different YouTubers. Remember, that was the first thing that I said. Check out Wolf, Zang, Moxie Boosted, James Beck, Osiris, all those people. People latch themselves onto the YouTubers so much they become like a weaker version of those YouTubers, basically. They use all the same tech, they use all the same mons. There's people that play very much like myself as well. But if you follow what I said to a T, basically, what it will do is it will teach you how to take those YouTubers' styles, tweak them, blend them with your own, see what works for you, and over, 2, 3, 4 weeks, a month, 2 months, a year at most, you'll have a fully developed playstyle that's your own. And that's something that, that's something that just is pretty special, I think, in the VGC community. That is something I feel has been lost in the Sword and Shield era. So hopefully this little guide helped. I have no idea if it helped. Like I said, I went through, this is all in one take. I didn't do, this is all in one take. If you guys like this, think about letting me know. Think about leaving a comment if you have any questions. Think about dropping a sub. We're trying our best to be the best channel for helping people going into Scarlet and Violet. And yeah, if there's anything you want me to be a little bit more clear on, let me know in the comments. And don't forget to check out all of the linked videos I have in the description. The videos for talking about notes are very important. The videos that I have talking about the regional locations is pretty important, so think about checking those out. Other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. Peace out, and I'll see you guys next time.